So like I said earlier, functions are like verbs in programming. So it's like in English, you have nouns, verbs, and verbs is more of action words. So now for any action you take, it has a name. Every action that you definitely take has a name. So this time around, imagine a scenario whereby those actions do not have a name attached to it. So that's where anonymous function comes into play. So that's what we'll be handling today. So anonymous function. So how do you write an anonymous function? The way you write an anonymous function is different from the way you write normal function. If I'm to write a normal function, I would have done this. The type, then the name of the function, then a return type, because this particular type of function is going to return something. So, but now, because I want to write an anonymous function, this is basically the normal function. So I can now return a plus b. So now, because I want to write an anonymous function, you now see the difference. I'm not going to add this part, but I'm going to go with this part. I'm not going to add this part, but I'm going to go with this part. So right now, because I don't want to add any parameter, and I'm going to use this arrow. This arrow here is the same as this. So it's the same thing as this. The arrow is the same thing as this. So anytime you see this or the arrow there, they both mean the same. They both mean the same thing. Okay, so I'll now say print hello. So let's run it and see. It wrote hello. Remember I said it's an anonymous function because it doesn't have a name. If I'm to write this in a normal way, if I'm to write it the normal way, write a function, I'll write it this way, string. I'll now say greet. And I'll say return hello. So this is what I would have written, but because I want to write it as an anonymous function, I have to attach it to a variable. So if I remove this, now, it will be very difficult for me to call the function. So that's why I have to attach it to a variable. So this is the difference between a normal function and an anonymous function. Now, you see the way a normal function is. You have your return type, you have the function name, then you have your parentheses, then you have the body. So this opening and closing is the body. Because this particular function has a data type, so it's going to have return keyword. So but in a situation where we don't want to give the function name, that's why we use anonymous functions. So we've done the first function, which is function with no parameter. All right, let's continue. Now we're going to work on anonymous function with parameter. So this one doesn't have a parameter, and this one is going to have a parameter. So how do we go about that? Add, because we're working in an anonymous function, we have to attach it to a variable. So this is a variable. Add. Now, inside this brackets, we have to add the variables, the parameters. So after the parentheses, we're going to have this arrow function. So this arrow function, I'll now add a plus b. Oh, that should be around here. A plus b, and I'll close it. So for me to make use of this function, I'll write print add. So a can be any number, it can be 3, b can be 5. So if I run this, let's run it and see what it's going to give us. So it gave us 8, because when you add 3 plus 5, it's going to give you 8. So this is how you write this anonymous function. Had it been I want to write this in a normal way, if I want to write this in a normal function, I have to do it this way: int add int a int b return a plus b. So this is how I'm going to write it in a normal way. But because I want to write it as an anonymous function, remember, anonymous function is a function without a name. You can call it a normal function that you remove this part. So that's another way you can do it. So remember I told you that this is equals to this, which is more like arrow. So when you now run it, it's going to give us 8. So the next function we're going to look at is anonymous function with return keys. Like we always do, variable. Okay, we want to find maximum between two numbers. We have two numbers and we're trying to find which one is greater and which one is less than. So I will now add the two parameters, int a, int b. Now, when you want to check between two numbers, when you want to really know a number that is greater than or less than, we use if statement. If is a kind of we use it to make a decision between two outcomes. So I can say if a is greater than b, return a, else return b. So at this point, we want to check between two numbers a and b, which one is greater. So we now say print max a. So the first number will be a. Let's make it 4. Let's make it 4. B, let's make it 6. So we're going to run this to know which one it is going to print. So if a is greater than b, return a, else return b. So a is return b. It returned b. So the idea here is that it's going to return the one that is greater. The one that is greater between the two numbers, because we are looking at the maximum between the two numbers. So we have 4, we have 6, and we want to know the one that is greater. So we now use anonymous function with a return keyword, but we added additional layer with if statement. So we say if a is greater than B, return A, else return B. So between 4 and 6, it must return the number that is greater regardless of whether it's A or B. So if we make A 8 and run it now, let's see, it's supposed to give us 8. So it gave us 8. So it will always return the one that is greater. Now, let's work on minimum. So remember, we are using anonymous function. So we write int A, int B. Okay. So if A is less than B, so we're looking at the one that is smaller here. Return A, else return and let's bring it down, else return B. So we want to get the number that is minimum between two numbers. So now let's check. Print min 3, 5. Okay. So why I did this is because I want to make a statement. That's why I'm using. Remember, I said whenever you want to pick the value, use this $sign. But if there is more than one value that you want to pick its value, you have to use this curly brace to cover the whole expression inside it. So I will now say the minimum number between 3 and 5. Okay, let's say the lesser number between 3 and 5 is, so let's run it now and see what it's going to give us. So the lesser number between 3 and 5 is 3. So I don't want you to get confused here because of this. Because remember, originally when we want to use this, as we now want to print, let's use anonymous function. Salutes. I now use an anonymous function. So if I want to print this, why I'm doing this, so that we know where we use this curly brace after the $sign and where we just use $sign. And I can now say, I said I add the $sign and I use salute to my friends. So I said, if I print it now, it's going to say, I said hello to my friends. Why I actually brought about this is because I want you to know where you have to use this curly brace and where you just use one. I have to use this curly brace because there is more than one thing inside here. There is an expression here. It's not just one variable. It's not just one value. But for here, it's just one value, so I don't need to add the curly brace.
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay, that's great. So that's why I have to make out time to explain this so that you understand where to and where not to use this particular function. So the next one we're going to look at is anonymous function with map. Map is most times used with lists. When you want to do the same thing to every item in the list, when you want to perform the same task or perform the same action with every item in the list. So a map is more like using a for loop. So it's a shorter form of for loop. So I can say int numbers. So I now give a list of number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Of course, it's giving me error. It says I have to add a list. Yes, I have to add a list. So numbers. So now I want to multiply by 2. So I want to multiply each number by 2. So numbers dot map. Okay, it's saying that this is an iterable. That's number that can be, you want to go over a series of numbers. So I'm not supposed to use any particular type, so I'll use variable. So our error is gone. Now look, inside this place, this is an anonymous function because it's a function without a name. So n times 2. So what we did here is that we want to multiply every number inside this list by 2. So let's print multiply. So if you look, what we have here was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But what it's now giving us is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. So we've succeeded in multiplying every number here by 2. This is what we'll have done. We would have done it this way for n in numbers. So we have to add a variable here. Is another way of doing it. We see that the map on is shorter. Print n times 2. So this is another way of doing it. We notice that this one is shorter. So we just say numbers.map, which is almost the same thing. Let's run it and see. So if we look, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. So it still gave us the same, but we are more interested in using map. So if we want to multiply by 3, what is it going to give us?
Please repeat the question.
I said we have a list of numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So if we multiply that list using map by 3, what is the
Mm-hmm.
list going to be? Remember that each item in the list, each number in the list will be multiplied by 3.
3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21.
Okay, let's check it. Let's run it and see. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 20. Very correct. So that shows that you're following. That shows that you are following. So the next we've worked with map. The next one I want us to look at is anonymous function with where. So this is normally used in a situation where we maybe want to get even numbers or odd numbers. So let's say var even numbers equals to. So we are still going to use this. So we want to get the even numbers that is inside this space. So we say numbers dot where numbers. Sorry. Oh, it's outside, no wonder. So numbers dot where, remember this is an anonymous function inside the bracket, but this anonymous function has a variable. So n, this is modulus operator. So what this modulus operator does is that when you divide something like 2 by a modulus, instead of using the divisible operator, use this percentage, which is modulus operator. It's going to show you if you have any remainder. So this is actually used to show if we have a remainder. So now what we want to do, we want to check throughout this list, and we want to get the numbers that when we divide by 2, there will be no remainder. The remainder will be 0. So 1 divided by 2 is also a fraction. 2 divided by 2 is 1, so it will be 0. 3 divided by 2 is 1, remainder 1. 4 divided by 2 is 2, there is no remainder. 5 divided by 2 is 2, so there is a remainder 1. 6 divided by 2 is 3, there is no remainder. So we want to get the numbers that when you divide it by 2, there will be no remainder, and that's what I see I call even numbers. Okay, so now let's print even numbers. So let's see what let's see. So we have gone through the list and we are looking at numbers that are even. So we have 2, 4, 6. So I can actually make a sentence with this. So I'll add a $sign here. The even numbers in the list are, so it's going to give us these ones. So the even numbers in the list are 2, 4, and 6. Those are the even numbers in the list. So if you now see, we use where we want to perform actions on specified items in the list. But what we use map when we want to perform the same action on every item on the list. So that's the difference between map and where. Use map when you want to perform the same action on every item on the list. If you check there, it's going to do this multiply 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it's going to give us a value. But now we use where we want to work on particular numbers within the list because we are interested in even numbers here. So we now say 2, 4, 6, and it gave us 2, 4, 6. So that's actually all that I have for today.